tells us. God tells Moses, before this even happens, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them, and I will get glory. To God be the glory. Can you make it go to another slide? Oh, maybe not. Oh, there we are. And as it turns out, we were literally the first foreigners in years to get permission to live in this restricted part of the country. God provides. All right. What else have we learned? We've learned the church is broken. And that's not new news. Just read Revelation. There's some letters to some churches in there that kind of give us hints about that. But the church in this country where we're serving is no different. And we knew that it wasn't healthy. We knew that there weren't a lot of mature believers there. And that's why we were going, to build up the church, to help encourage people, to teach people how to incorporate their faith into their lives. But we learned a lot of really hard truths this year. That there are huge political divides in this church, huge. There are people believing people who work at the hospital, who go to this church, who refuse to take orders from their supervisors, who also work at the hospital, who also go to the same church because of political divides. There are familial divides. It's just a mess. There are people there. Alcoholism is a huge problem. This country is a Muslim country. We never dreamed that we were going to be facing people with alcohol problems, and yet it's rampant there. There are people who have just thrown away their health because of alcohol. And these are people who are going to church or sometimes getting shunned from the church because they don't have their act together. That's another thing, that the church is not a welcoming place there. There's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of hostility. There's a lot of emphasis on image and making sure that you look put together. And it's just broken, and it's so sad. In this country where there's less than 0.3% Christian, it's just all the more heartbreaking that you have this church. You have a church that's so broken. But we have fun too. Libby is allergic to cats, allergic to fur, and the last thing in the world was that I expected was to be a pet owner, and I was okay with that. Animals are okay, but whatever. But they saw this cute little kitten. We saw the cute little kitten going meow, meow, meow in the hospital, and someone had brought it a little plate of rice, and all day it just went meow, meow, meow. I tried to find so many people to take it home. No one would. And next thing I knew, I came home and Libby told the kids, "Oh yeah, you guys can take care of it." I'm like, "What?" So we have an arrangement. It's an outdoor cat, and it doesn't come inside. And the one who cuddles with it and loves it the most is sitting right there. I built that tree house there on the right. I've never built a tree house before. It's made entirely out of bamboo because that's what grows there. And I knew nothing about building with bamboo, but so far it hasn't fallen down, and it's kind of fun. The kids put their hammocks up there sometimes. It's got those windows that you can open and close. I'm going to build a second floor maybe or something. I don't know, but we have fun. Relationships matter. This picture is taken at tea time. In this culture, tea is a really big deal, and it's so inefficient. It is painful sometimes. So I like to get things done, and I go and we round and we see all of our patients, and then I'm like, all right, let's go, what's next? And then someone will say, oh, it's tea time. And then like, okay, let's have tea. But all of these people here are the doctors at the hospital. And one doctor or two doctors can't go to tea without all the other doctors. And if so the other doctors are busy, you have to wait for them. You can't disrespect them by going early. You have to stand there and wait. And you can't really get involved in other work because you don't know when they're going to be ready. This whole process can take like a half an hour just waiting for everyone to be ready. And then you go and you drink tea for another half an hour or 40 minutes. And it's delicious and it's great. And the language is all the local language and it's spoken really fast. And, our language abilities are okay, but I probably understand maybe 50% max of what they're saying. And so it seems so inefficient for us to be spending our time doing that. But that's what matters. One of these guys at the table here, he told us about his secret engagement, and his parents still don't even know because he wanted to tell us he likes us. We're his friends. We're like in his inner circle, and he's not a believer. I've been able to share the gospel with him. I've been able to model praying with patience for the believers that are on the staff here. It's just, there's so much trust that gets built up from time like this that seems so inefficient. But it's good. Relationships matter. And kind of a corollary to that is that being present matters. There was one day where my junior colleague that I'm training to do surgery, he was off giving a lecture somewhere. I didn't have any patients, and so I had the whole afternoon just kind of free. I was really excited. My inbox, it's always like 3,000 unread emails. It's incredible, and I hate email. And Joe will attest, I try really hard to respond, and I do an okay job, but it's so much spam. Anyways, I was trying to catch up on my email that day, and so I went and I sat in what they call it, the chamber, the office where I see patients. There was no one there. And I pick up my phone, and then a nursing student came up, and they're usually pretty shy. There's a big hierarchy. They don't like to interrupt or anything, but this nursing student started talking to me, and here I am, and she's talking, and she's talking. I'm like, okay, come on. And I'm trying to get through my email, and I couldn't get through my email. And it turns out this girl, she wanted to talk about her faith because she was a Christian, and she knew I was a Christian, and she wanted to talk about baptism. And she's like, I've never been baptized, and I don't really think I want to get baptized because if I don't get baptized, then I don't have to follow all the same rules. And I'll do that eventually because, my parents are Christian, and I know that I'm going to be Christian too, but I'm just going to put it. And we had a really good conversation about baptism, about salvation, about the importance of pleasing God. And I never got to my email. I'm a little bit thicker-headed than that, though. So I go to a different part of the hospital. I go to the operating room because there's a little tea room there. I'm like, all right, no one will bother me here. I'll have a cup of tea. It's going to be great. I do the same thing. I pick up my phone. And then one of the guys in this picture, a Buddhist guy, he comes up to me. And he starts telling me about how he's so frustrated with Buddhism, with Islam, with Christianity, with every religion he's ever heard of, because God is so good. How can you ever measure up? And I'm like, let me tell you about this guy named Jesus. And I got to tell him about how he doesn't have to measure up on his own. And it was just such a good conversation. But during the conversation, all these other nursing students came in. One of them was a believer, and she starts helping me with my memory verses in the local language. She was like, oh, yeah, I know that one. And it was just a really good conversation. I didn't get an email, but it was good. And at the end of the day, I'm like, wow, that was a good day. And then what we're still learning, we live in a different culture, and it is really hard for us to navigate cultural norms. The medical director in this hospital, he's the alpha dog. He is the number one big shot guy, and we like that. We like that he's in charge, and he is a believer who wants his country to know Jesus, and we want to elevate that and support that and do what we can. But that's hard because we come in and we have training in things that he doesn't have training in, and we have a family that is willing to help with financial or material needs, and so we have resources at our disposal that he doesn't have direct access to. And we don't want to be a threat to him, but inherently that's kind of a threat. And so it's a hard situation to navigate. And a story that illustrates that well, there's one week where we were having electricity problems in our house. We rent our house from the hospital as do the other Americans. Everyone who works for the hospital gets free housing, but we pay rent. And we have a washing machine, but anytime we plugged it in and used it, it blew the power not just for our house, but for the entire hostel of nursing students right next door of 91 girls. And so we didn't plug it in. We had an extension cord going across our living room. We had it plugged in over there. And after about a week of this, we were having water problems too. We're supposed to have running water, but it's like in a tank that kind of comes down. And every morning for the last like 3 or 4 mornings, I was taking these bucket baths because we didn't have running water. And so I wasn't feeling super excited about life at that point in time. But we had a weekly meeting with the medical director, and we tried to be non-confrontational, but we really failed. What we did is we said, "So, sir, we pay rent, and we're just kind of wondering, like, what does the rent cover? Like, do we need to pay for electricians, or does our rent money cover that?" And he was so taken aback. He's like, "I need to think about this. Let's continue the meeting." And so he didn't answer. And then like 15 minutes later, in the middle of another conversation in the meeting, he's like, "I'm ready to answer the question. I am so sorry that I have not been able to provide better housing for you. All of your rent money immediately goes to pay the salary of the people at the hospital. We have no savings. We have no built-up finances. Everything that we take in immediately goes out. And I am so sorry that it is not to your satisfaction. And I thought you were real missionaries. I didn't realize that you would have to have such luxury." Ouch. If this were my microphone, I'd mic drop. But ouch. Ouch. Yeah. So of course, if I tell you, "Oh yeah, I'm doing bucket baths every day and we have an extension cord across our living room," you guys are like, "We're doing what?" But really, we have the nicest house, or we as teams have the nicest houses on the hospital property, except maybe the directors, but we're not living in shambles compared to everyone around us. So his role is, we're learning, the provider, the patron. We are his clients. Our job is to support him and help him and work for him and give him compliments, and then he provides for us and he gives us whatever influence and security he can. But it's a very indirect system that we're not really used to. And so we're not doing that amazingly well, but we're learning, and we are still learning. And then speaking of patience, I think I'm supposed to be wrapping up around now, right? So this is the last thing. We're still learning patience. Nothing happens quickly. I showed you guys this picture, or a very similar picture, before we left. This is the chapel at the hospital, and it's kind of a symbol of what we want to do at the hospital. We're taking the foundation of what they've done. You can tell it's half built, and we want to help them make progress. We want to help build it up. And obviously, a building is a building is a building. This is a symbol, a metaphor. We want to build up their spiritual lives. We want to build them up as temples for Christ. But this is what it looked like before we left, and then here's what it looks like now. Oh, yeah, exactly the same. Yeah. So it's been a year, and before we left, the president of the sending organization that we're with, he was at our house, and he said, "I just want to let you guys know, I think I put your odds of success at about 25%. I'm like, "What?" I mean, that hurt. And he's like, "Now, don't get me wrong. I just tell you that because there are all these obstacles. You're going into a place that doesn't have any other Americans. There are all these cultural norms that you're going to have to deal with. There's all these political things. The church there is broken. I just want you to know that if it doesn't work out, it's probably not going to be your fault. And so I'm just letting you know it's a hard situation." And so we knew it was going to be hard. And so we kind of set ourselves a goal in the first year of surviving. And we did that. We survived. And have we finished this chapel? No. But we'll get there. we'll get there. We're starting to build the foundations with our relationships, with our networking, with the people there. We'll get there. We'll get there. And so that's the end. I think there's now opportunity for question and answer. I didn't get into a lot of the day-to-day nitty-gritty, but kind of the overarching view. And so, the last thing is that Libby is going to come up and share a few prayer requests, and then we'll do question and answer. Or maybe we'll do that at the end. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the normal format.
Yeah, so prayer requests. Just got a text this morning that a second teammate tested positive for COVID. So one teammate tested positive last week and had fairly low oxygen levels, and we were wondering if we would need to evacuate her, but thankfully she has stabilized and is doing much better. And then a second teammate just tested positive overnight, and there are several others with symptoms. So far, all the symptoms have been mild, but if you could just pray for health for our teammates without us there. I mean, they're fine, but that's on our hearts. That's probably the main thing. And then I think what we've just felt is the need for wisdom and just trying to think through next steps. There are so many different opportunities to improve quality of care in the hospital, to pour into the church that is there. And there are a million different ministries and things that we could start, but what would be the best use of our time as each individual with the gifts that God has given us and the time and the just language, everything that we have for this next year? What are those next steps, and what does it look like to live our faith and just to be faithful in these next things? So just pray for wisdom and even just knowing what questions to ask and just how to continue to go forward. I think those are our two main things. Are there any questions or anything else? Yes, Bethany.
So the main thing that they asked me to come and do was build up their surgery department basically from scratch. They had surgeons there before, and there was an exodus from their surgery department, and they were dormant for about 2 years. And so it's been a lot of patience. The idea of scrubbing and being sterile before a surgery took me about 6 months to teach. The idea of we always do a surgical timeout before a case where we say the patient's